Hello everyone! Oh, that fell. I figured that was going to happen. My name is Nicole. Let me just get this turned around. Hello, and welcome to Interp Training Tuesday. Today, I apologize for the halo I've got going on here. There's some weird lighting happening in this room, but I am really excited for today's Interp Training Tuesday because we are talking about my very favorite interp topic. Oh, thank you, Click 724 for joining us. We are just about to get started with my very favorite interp training techniques, transitions. This is probably the bread and butter of my interpretive presentations. I love using transitions in my storytelling. I love practicing transitions. It's one of my favorite sections of training to do with staff or with new interpreters because everything that we talk about today, and it's going to be a short training Tuesday, keep it nice, short, and sweet for everyone. Everything that we talk about today is a game. Hello, Famous Thamus, for joining us. We're going to be talking about games, real, honest to goodness games that you can buy in a game store that you can use to help train your transitions so that they are better, stronger, and best of all, able to help actually bridge from sub-theme to sub-theme and bring your theme into all of your presentations and really help keep you on track. So I'm just going to wait maybe one more minute for anyone else to join us who's joining us live on Periscope today for our Interp Training Tuesday. For the two people we have in the chat already, do you want to share where you're from, where you're checking in from today, and if you're from an interpretive site, maybe where it is that you do your interpretation? So you can just write in a comment below, see where people are joining us from. Give a couple more minutes for anyone else to join us, like Maria Morser. Hello, welcome. So where are you joining us from today for Interp Training Tuesday? We've got Clark from Austin. Hey Clark, nice to see you. Really excited to have you. Let's see. Anyone else joining in from anywhere else? All right, if you don't want to share, that's okay too. So let's get started then. I said this was going to be a short and sweet Interp Training Tuesday because transitions, if they're used effectively, are short and sweet. They get you from point A to point B in a way that's easy to follow, that doesn't feel disjointed and doesn't feel like we've finished talking about point A, now we're going to talk about point B. That is a lazy transition and something I find to be a really big pet peeve of mine when I'm watching an interpretive presentation. So I want my transitions to be short and snappy, but ultimately connect to what I'm talking about. Hello, Appler. Nice to see you joining us while we talk about transitions and how they can be used effectively. So the very first technique I ever came up with to train transitions really well, hi Mike Charlie, nice to have you joining us, was actually a game that my friend Lindsay and I invented when we were a little giggly. This is probably 6 years ago almost, and we were watching my screensaver at home. I can't remember really the situation we were in. We were waiting to go out somewhere. We had had a little bit to drink, I'll be very honest, and my screensaver on my computer at the time was probably what a lot of you have, that screensaver that actually rotates all of the pictures in your photo albums saved on your hard drive through at a sort of random various speed. You can tap the screen if you know what I'm talking about there. If you have ever seen those screensavers before, they're pretty typical, kind of nothing really to write home about or anything, but that particular day when we were looking around for something to do until we could go out, this turned into the best transition training game I have ever since been able to come up with. And it was really just my friend and I being goofy. We had a lot of fun just trying to tell each other stories using the pictures that were showing up on my screensaver. And it became a great training tool that I've since replicated with most of my staff and in various trainings at conferences that I've been to. So basically what happened was my friend Lindsay turned to me, saw all the pictures flipping around and said, tell me a story. And I took her up on the challenge. I started with the very first picture that showed up on my computer screen, and I started talking about whatever it was. And then as the next picture came in, I started incorporating that picture and over again. And ultimately just tried to tell a cohesive story, that's really the key there, using the new material that I didn't know was going to be coming. Because frequently in our interpretive presentations, we have to use transitions not only to move from sub-theme to sub-theme, but as most of you have probably experienced, we have to use transitions in order to deal with distractions as they come up. So we need these transitions in our presentations, our formal interpretive presentations, and even our informal presentations in order to use them effectively. So what I've done is I've come up with a game. You can do it with your screensaver if you have that at home. And if you're just joining us, again, welcome to Interp Training Tuesday, where we talk about some techniques that are used in interpretation, how to use them effectively. Hello. So what we've got is you can either use a screensaver at home if you have a computer in front of you, or for training purposes when I'm leading them at conferences, what I actually ended up doing was just printing a whole bunch of pictures off of the internet. Now I've had these same sets of pictures for almost 4 years now. I haven't had to add new pictures to them. I always get new stories and different stories from the staff in my training sessions, and they're anything and everything. I've got kids dancing around. I've got coral reefs and other ecosystems, animals specifically, people on boats. There's a little bit of a marine theme there, but we've also got planes, anything like that. And ultimately, we have these, and you flip through them and you try and tell a cohesive story. Now, the easiest version, so we get our snake right side up there, would be to tell a story using only maybe 2 or 3 pictures, and you give the storyteller that opportunity to know that they're only going to have to work in 2 to 3 pictures. And as they talk about the snake, once upon a time there was a snake. You, the flipper, flip it over, and the snake lived in a river bed. Well, pretty easy. Maybe it's a sea snake, maybe it's a river snake. And it had a really good friend. So that's what's really critical here, is this could be interpreted exactly like it is to human beings sitting in a crowd talking or hanging out with their hands around each other, but it doesn't have to be. And that's really where your transition training will come into play. Looking at something and then actually using maybe an aspect of that thing in order to incorporate it into what you're talking about. So you can acknowledge it, but you don't have to completely derail what you're talking about. My snake didn't turn into a human being. It just had a really good friend. So, like I said, I'm going to keep this Interp Training Tuesday short and sweet. That's one game you can play. Another game, if maybe transitions are new to you, or you're just starting out in your interpretive training and you really want to get good at transitions quickly, this is a game I picked up at a local game store. It's called Connexio. Now that might be showing up backwards on the screen, I'm not sure, but it is called Connexio, and it is, exactly as it says, a game of infinite associations and imaginations. And if interpreters don't have infinite imaginations, well, I don't really know what we do have then. It's a really great game. I play it with my young cousins, actually, who are only 4 and 5 years old, so it's a game that sort of the whole family can enjoy, but it can help you practice your transitions at the same time. Has anyone ever heard of this game before? Tap that screen if you have. I actually haven't met anyone who has heard of it until I've introduced them to it, which is funny and interesting, but obviously it was being sold at my game store, so somebody else in the world has to have heard of this game before. Inside, you're going to find a game board. There you go. It's got little circles on it, and there's 2 sides to this game board. This is the easy side, or sorry, this is the hard side. There's also an easy side. I'm not going to go into the exact rules of the game, because if you buy the game, you'll find the instructions. But ultimately, this is the meat of the game. You have this magic pouch, and inside you have really hundreds of little coin-shaped pogs, if anyone remembers pogs. And they have random objects on them, like a block, an old coin, a baby toy, or maybe just a baby, whatever you want. And ultimately, what you're going to do is use these pogs, place them next to each other on your game board, and try and find a connection between them. So babies play with blocks or play with toys, sure. But what if you've got a toy soldier and a raccoon? Well, out in the forest, soldiers encounter all kinds of wildlife, including maybe a raccoon. You never know. It's a really great game. It's very simple and easy to play, and there really are infinite connections to be made, because this is a very heavy and very large bag of random objects. I really like this game when I've only got about 10 minutes to play with my staff. I just hand out 4 or 5 pogs, I guess, and see what connections people come up with each other, pair them up randomly. Excellent, really quick training game for transitions. But probably my favorite game of all time for practicing transitions, and ultimately, thanks Clark, for practicing storytelling at all is a game that I was introduced to by the YouTube video game series Tabletop, hosted by Will Wheaton. Has anyone ever heard of Will Wheaton's Tabletop before? If you like playing board games, awesome YouTube show. Awesome YouTube show. It's introduced me to a whole bunch of games that my friends and I now play all the time. But this is probably one of my favorites, and I get to use it for work in my interpretive training. It's called Once Upon a Time. And just by virtue of its name, you can probably tell it is a storytelling game. There is a winner at the end of this game, but really the point of the game is to tell a good story. And you tell it collaboratively with other storytellers all working together. The artwork, first and foremost, in this game is stunning. Even just when you sort of open it up, you get a sense of like beautiful artwork. So it's a really gorgeous game to play as well. But what happens to you when you step into Once Upon a Time is you become a storyteller, and you're given a certain number of cards. And there's 5 categories of cards. You have characters, like the stepmother. That doesn't say that she's evil. Could be a very nice stepmother. You have places, like in the sky. You have things, like a window. And you have events, something breaks, maybe. And finally, you have aspects. So in this case, what I dealt myself was someone was healed or something was healed. So you have all of these sorts of cards in your hand, and you're never guaranteed to have one of each. You could have a lot of characters, a lot of places, a lot of events, a lot of aspects. And ultimately, you use your cards to try and tell a story. In order to play the cards in your hand, you have to bring that element into the story. So when I become the storyteller, I have to introduce the stepmother into the story. There's a little more to it than that, but that's really the amount of detail I wanted to get into in our Training Tuesday Periscope. Ultimately, you're working with your fellow coworkers to tell a really good story, and transitions are a key part of that because, in fact, your fellow storytellers become your judges. And they're judging the depth of your story. Hello, thank you for joining us, Edward. They're judging the depth of your story when you're playing Once Upon a Time. They're judging how you use the elements that have already been introduced to the story. You can't forget past elements. You have to listen really carefully. And ultimately, they're judging your transitions. You can't just lay, stepmother was in the sky, looking out her window up at the sky, and then her window broke and she healed it. That's not a good story. It's a lazy story, and your fellow storytellers will judge you on it, and you're not going to be able to win the game, which is to tell a good story and ultimately get that story to your desired ending. This is the little competitive twist in the game at the end. Every individual storyteller, though you've been working together to tell a cohesive story. Hello, we've got someone from France joining us now. Fantastic. Anyone can play this game. It's called Once Upon a Time, and it is an awesome game for training your storytelling techniques and your transitions. So every storyteller who's playing, although you're all working collaboratively to actually tell one cohesive story, you are also working against each other because every storyteller at the table has a different ending card that they are trying to get their story to. And this is why I love the game so much. You never know what your fellow storytellers are trying to get the story to, what point they're trying to get it to end. So my ending, if I was playing, was she never let her treasure out of her sight. So I would have to introduce that stepmother in a really meaningful, deep, easily and strongly connected way. The window, the things breaking, something being healed, and up in the sky. And then ultimately try and steer the story to this specific ending. A tough feat, but a really great one, and probably the very best all-inclusive interpretive training tool that I've ever found. And it's, sorry, I lost you for a second. And it's a game that you can buy at your local game store. So that's it for me on today's Interp Training Tuesday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you've gotten at least one new idea of how you can train transitions, a really key piece of a professionally put together interpretive presentation or informal interpretive program. Again, those were sort of screensavers that you can use with pictures, just trying to tell a story from there, a game called Connexio, and the game Once Upon a Time. If you want to learn more about Once Upon a Time or see some really great professional storytellers playing it, you can watch that episode on Will Wheaton's Tabletop. Just search Tabletop and Once Upon a Time. It's an awesome hour of your life that you will not regret. And if anyone has any suggestions on other ways to use or train transitions, please feel free to email them to me, to Facebook them to me. You can find me at Nicole Can, or when I put this video up on YouTube later on tonight, please add it into the comments. We'd love to hear them from you. Thank you again so much, everyone, for joining me live. I really appreciated having you here. And if you're watching it on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed today's Interp Training Tuesday. Thanks so much.